Good day, everyone. Welcome to one of our bite-sized videos, of which the purpose is to bring you, the integrator, up to speed with some of the basic concepts surrounding the Flowgear integration experience, as well as take a brief dive into one of our popular use cases. We're going to start by exploring the screen in front of you, the Flowgear console, which is the very first thing you'll be greeted with after logging into Flowgear. The Flowgear console provides access to all the components relevant to your integrations. From here, you can navigate to spaces that facilitate the setup for different parts of the integration. The three primary spaces that I'd like to briefly touch on are the workflows, connections, and drop points. Workflows can be found by navigating to the workflow section over here. And workflows provide a canvas from which you can drag and drop connectors and tooling provided by the Flowgear platform and construct your integration according to your business rules. We will go more in depth around workflows once we start to explore the specific use case. Connections, which we can navigate to by clicking over here, are spaces with which you can provide credentials that allow you to authenticate and connect to the systems which you would like to integrate with. We can go ahead and click on the new button over here, and we can go ahead and select a particular connector to work with, and choosing any one of the connectors we can see here within the connector section, such as Connect, Manage. You'll see there's a space in which you can plug in credentials that are relevant to that specific platform. You then have the option of providing credentials for different profiles, such as test and production, and you will be able to run your workflow or integration within that profile, which will then target that specific environment that you've set up. If you set up your credentials correctly, you can click on the play button over here, which, if successful, will give you a green banner telling you that the test succeeded. Finally, we have the drop point section. The idea behind the drop points is that it is our solution to hybrid on-prem and cloud integrations. You can install the drop point agent onto your on-prem servers, which will allow us then to talk to those servers within the scope of what you allow us to do using the whitelisting features. This means that we can talk to your file systems, we can talk to your AD, or we can move data between CRMs and ERPs that are not exposed to the internet with the drop point. These three spaces are the most important aspects related to the integrations themselves within Flowgear. For a deeper dive into the elements that make up the Flowgear console, please see our bite-sized video focusing on navigating the Flowgear console. Next, we're going to take a deeper dive into workflows and nodes. To do this, we're going to navigate to the workflow section, which we have done by clicking on this workflow over here. And from there, we're going to open up a new workflow by clicking on the new button right over here, at which point we're given the option to name the workflow, which we can name it appropriately, and click on the OK button over here. At which point you're then greeted with the Flowgear design canvas, the purpose of which is to provide you with the space to drag and drop Flowgear tooling in a specific sequence in order to string it together and then form the basis of an integration from end to end. Now, to start dropping the tooling onto the canvas, we're going to click this plus icon over here, which is going to open up a list of our nodes. All of these little blocks are what we consider nodes, and simply put, a node is a function or set of functions that have been encapsulated in a certain way that the most complex aspects of it have been obscured from you, and only the parts that you have to interact with are exposed. Now, within our nodes, we have distinct categories, and the first category you can see here are the connectors. The connectors are responsible for talking to the systems with which you would like to integrate, and so all of the complexity around authenticating and talking to these platforms is hidden behind the node, and again, only the most relevant aspects of the node are exposed to you. Triggers are nodes that allow you to determine how a workflow should kick off. So it gives you architectural freedom around when a workflow should run and how it should run. In other words, if you would like a workflow to run twice daily or every 15 minutes, or perhaps on receiving a particular email, triggers will facilitate that process. Processes are the nodes that are responsible for actually supplementing, transforming, and enriching the data sets that you need to work with. So when you receive data from system A and needs to be transformed to a different structure so that system B can ingest it, the processes are there to facilitate that functionality, as well as implement further business rules that you may have necessary for your integration. And then finally, evaluators are the nodes that are going to have a look at the result of a transaction and allow you to kick off additional supporting logic within that workflow. In other words, should a transaction fail, does somebody need to be emailed? Does someone have to be informed in some way? Does a report have to be built? So on and so forth. These four categories encapsulate all the tools that Flowgear provides the integrator, allowing you to build both simple and complex integrations within the scope of a simplified experience. For this particular demo, what we're going to do is extract some data from a PDF and create records in a target system. Those records will be customers and it'll be heading into Salesforce in the form of accounts. Now, to kick off this process, the first thing we want to do is go ahead and open up a brand new workflow. We'll give this workflow a relevant name. And from here, we'll start to design this particular solution. We'll go ahead and also show you what that PDF is going to look like, so you have an idea of the sort of data we're looking to extract. This is an invoice, and we'll be looking to extract the customer information here. The scenario being that you want to make sure the customer exists in your system before you process said invoice. As we head back to the canvas, the first thing we want to do is apply the most meaningful aspect of this whole effort, which is the PDF parser itself. So as we head to the node selection, we'll look for the PDF parser and we'll apply that to the canvas. Now, typically what we need to do so that we can work with some data to actually map against the customer or the account is to get that PDF onto the canvas so that we can work with it. Now, in production, there'd be a number of ways we could achieve this. That PDF data could be coming through an endpoint. It could be uploaded or pulled from a particular FTP location. Whatever the case might be, we need to get this here for the purposes of building out the solution. And so what we're going to do as a simple scenario is make this particular workflow ready to upload the PDF by ourselves. And so we'll do this by adding a variable bar onto the canvas. Go ahead and create an output variable called file of type file with the extension PDF. And we'll go and drag this into the document section here and make sure the execution flow is going to do that. We'll then head to the settings and make this workflow allow run on demand and save this for the first time. What this will allow us to do now is head to the landing page for this workflow and run it against the test environment such that we can upload that PDF. Go ahead and upload the PDF, run the workflow and wait for that to complete. Now we can head back to our canvas where if we check the recent activity logs, we will see that this completed and we have that sample document here with the PDF data. We're going to make sure that's now sitting as sample data onto the canvas, and now we can work with this particular portion of the effort. The next step we want to perform is to prep the destination systems for inserting that account or customer information. And so we'll do so by applying a Salesforce node onto the canvas. We will then go and select a connection for that Salesforce node. If you were setting this up for the first time, you would have to go and create a brand new Salesforce node over here or connection. This connection will allow you to plug in credentials unique to Salesforce itself, for example, which you can then test against using the play icon over there. And through the green banner, there's confirmation that you have got a successful connection. We can go ahead and close this off. And then the next step will be to add a quick map onto the canvas, which will be responsible for transforming those data sets from point to point. So we'll take the output from the PDF parser and plug that into the request for Salesforce. However, we need to understand what that request will look like. So we're going to head through to the options window here and say choose sample. That's going to bring up a list of potential actions that we can perform against that environment. So we typically consume Salesforce's metadata to understand what kind of objects we can create and what they look like. And for our purpose, we want to look for create account, which we'll then click on over here, which then preps the Salesforce node itself for the action of creating an account, but also provides us with a request payload where we have got the structure that's expected from us here as an example. I'm going to go ahead and jump ahead to a point where we've done some of the meaningful mapping and then go through what that looks like. Here you can see a version where we've included some more mapping transformation, and so we'll take you through what that looks like and what it actually does. Now, the primary purpose of the quick map in this space is to take that data and give you a simple mechanism by which you can map the structure of that data into its expected structure for the target system, in this case, Salesforce. Now, the first quick map we have here is simply giving those fields a more meaningful name so that we can map that onto the next stage, which is actually taking care of most of the mapping here. And so we'll open up that mapping and we'll see two data trees, left and right. Left-hand side is the data coming from the PDF parser and the right-hand side is the data coming from or going to your Salesforce environment. Now, this is meant to be a simple mechanism which has a low barrier to entry. And so the purpose of this is to give you an easy way to drag across fields into their relevant spaces on the opposite side. That will take care of the structural transformation, but there may also be a requirement to enrich or supplement that data further. For example, we have our address 1 and 2 fields, which technically contain street, state, or city and state and postal address. We may want to separate those out. And so the way that we can do this then is through using expressions or functions that have been added to the quick map, which are very closely modeled after the Excel environment. And so we've done so on purpose. The purpose of which is that Excel is a very low barrier to entry. And so the tooling that you may be familiar with, such as sum, count, lookup, practically any math or string operation is available to you here. And you can see how we've used some of that here at the bottom. Inside of our expressions, we've got, for instance, the ability to separate out the city by taking the left of the particular comma here in this string. And then we have the ability to then trim some of these white spaces, as well as grab the postal code and separate it from address 2, and grab the state and separate that from address 2. So you can see how you can take your data to the next level of complexity here, not just structural mapping. Now that we have our preview on the right-hand side, which is showing us what we're expecting to see, we can see that the actual data is in the structure that Salesforce is expecting it. However, it's using the data coming from the PDF itself. We can go ahead and close this off. Now we're going to run this from end to end. We're going to take the sample data that we got initially from the first PDF parsing phase. We then mapped a selection of those fields into meaningful field names here. We can see the raw data for that. And then we took those particularly meaningful fields and mapped it into the structure that Salesforce is expecting it here. That then gets passed along to the Salesforce node, where we expect to see a response where we have got a successful transaction on this record. Success flag is true, and we have a unique ID for that particular record that was just created. Should there be a failure here, we would have visibility of that. That would sit inside of the response here, and we'd be able to discern the validation error and kick off additional logic, such as determining what needs to happen on the event of that failure. This particular example is not production ready. You may have to add additional error handling or additional business logic. However, this does represent a good portion of what you'd be expected to do when grabbing information from a PDF. This does count on the PDF having a static structure in this case. So for more complex use cases where you may have dynamic structures, there will be other tools included. The last few features I'd like to touch on are Enterprise API, revision, and release management. I'd like to show you where you can find those features and what they're all about. So as we start with Enterprise API, it is effectively the ability to turn any workflow into an API-bound endpoint. So to do this, you can head to the workflow settings on the top here. You can then navigate to the section that allows you to apply a binding, as well as a custom domain, which is set inside of your site settings, and then finally a custom path or URL, where this URL is then secured against an API key or a certificate and can be reached by any third-party application or program to pass data into or get data from Flowgear real-time. The next feature I'd like to touch on then is revision management. You can find that feature by clicking on the revision history button over here. And ultimately what this is the ability to see when changes were made, who they were made by, and what those versions of the workflows look like. You can then open those versions of the workflows by clicking on the open button here for any particular version. We'll go to the very first one, where we see there was actually nothing at that point. You can then choose to revert to this version if you would like to. The last feature I'd like to touch on is release management. You can find that feature by clicking on the promote workflow button over here. And what this brings up is a UI which allows you to merge your test into your UAT and eventually in production. Effectively, what this means is when a save is made, which I will do now, that save is not actually saved against the UAT or production environment until it's explicitly merged into that space. Now, you do not have to use this UI. The purpose of this particular feature is that it's actually backed in this case by GitHub, which provides you with a competent platform in which you can then run your change control policy that you've had up until this point. So if we open up this commit over here, we can find that it brings up the get UI, which gives us an idea of what changed from then till now. From here, we can run a pull request or whatever it is that you've been doing up until now, and then obviously merge that into production. And that will then reflect inside of Flowgear here as a production-ready workflow. Now that we've shown you how to build a workflow, if at any point you have to go back and see what happened in that workflow, you can navigate to the workflow logs over here. For more detailed information on the topics we explored today, or if you would like to explore more complex aspects of the platform, including architecture and best practices, please join us for our technical certification course hosted on udemy.com. Also, go ahead and check out some of our other bite-sized videos for more common use cases and platform features. Also, please go ahead and visit our website where you can register for a free trial and complimentary proof of concept, have a look at our unique pricing model, or explore our list of over 200 pre-built connectors. Thank you very much for joining me for this short demo. Have a lovely day further.